Jazz lost last night downtown. At home, Jokic had a triple-double. He was fantastic last night. Looked like the second coming of Sabonis, the dad. Arvydas Sabonis, not DeMontis, who's pretty good too. Jazz fell at home 98-95 last night. 5 straight losses right now. They've gone from second in the West to fifth in the West, and I don't know if it's just coincidence or not, but the schedule's gotten difficult, and the Jazz haven't been able to match that difficult schedule yet. First time on this show talking to our next guest. She took Eric's job on the Jazz beat at the Des News and has just picked up and ran where he was. Jazz beat writer from the Des News, Sara Todd, here on the Bill Riley Show. How are you, Sarah?
I'm great. How are you doing, Bill?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
So how has the adjustment to Salt Lake been? You've been here, about 2 months now? Is that right? About 2 months? 2.5 months?
Yeah, almost 2 months. And the adjustment has been pretty easy, and I've liked everything so far. Admittedly, haven't spent a ton of time in Salt Lake because the Jazz have had such a heavy road schedule, but I'm looking forward to a little bit of more time in Salt Lake after the All-Star break.
So you're used to snow. You worked in Philly, right? I don't know where you grew up, but I know you worked in Philly on the Sixers beat. So I mean, snow isn't a big deal, right?
Yeah, I grew up in a mountain town in Northern California.
Oh, you're
I was
good.
there. Had time in Philly, spent time in Norway in college. So as far as the snow I've experienced close to the Arctic Circle, Salt Lake isn't even that bad.
Yeah, the temperatures don't get Arctic cold here, so that's a good thing. Well, welcome. It's good to have you. Your work's been terrific so far. I've enjoyed reading you and following you and all that other stuff. So as somebody that's covered around the NBA, just give me your quick review because you've been to Salt Lake before on the beat, but now you're here full time. Give me a feel for this organization, this market, now that you've been here for a couple of months versus some of the other spots where you've been around the market. And is anything different now actually living here versus just popping in for a day or two?
Yeah, I think that the biggest difference that I've noticed as far as the team and the franchise goes is there's a lot of inclusivity as far as the fans and engagement and the team has with the community. And it feels a little bit more, and maybe that's just, for being a smaller market, because I've covered the Warriors and the Sixers, and those are very big NBA markets. And so as a smaller market team, it feels a little bit more like that, like it has a sort of a family atmosphere. And I think that trickles down into the coaches and the players where they feel a little bit more open and friendly and like they're not being hounded by 20 cameras every day. So I think that has something to do with it. Salt Lake, I don't know that I really came in with as many preconceived notions as some other people might. I'd taken many trips to Salt Lake as a kid with my dad and always loved it here. And like I said, familiar with sort of the mountain town feel. And so I think that it's lived up to its name. It's a beautiful city, and so far it's been great.
Well, it's great to have you, Sara Todd, with us. She's with the D News. Obviously, you guys probably follow and read her. You can find her on Twitter at NBA Sarah. That's Sarah. You got to put the H on the end there. You're going to probably find somebody else that covers the NBA. So, to the Jazz, when you took over the beat, they were trying to find themselves a little bit. Then they found themselves and went on the unbelievable roll. But we all knew that the schedule was going to get a little bit more difficult for them, and it has. And I don't know if it's the schedule and the competition, Sarah. I don't know if there's something on the inner workings of what's going on right now, working Mike back in or what. But they've not looked like the team we saw a month ago over the last week to 10 days. So in your much more close to it opinion than mine, and you're with it every day, what's going on right now?
Yeah, I think that it'd be really easy, and it is partially true, looking at it from the outside and saying that when the schedule got tough, the Jazz started losing, and that's absolutely true. And that, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that at all. As soon as the schedule got tough, they had that win against Dallas and then really fell off. And it's been against teams that they're going to need to be able to beat, especially when the playoffs come. We're talking about, possibilities of Portland or even San Antonio having a chance to squeak in, and then you've got Denver and Houston, and those are big ones to be concerned about. If you can't win against them, then you don't really have a chance of advancing in the playoffs. And so, yeah, they have had the, non-benefit of having a really tough schedule, and they're going to keep having it through the rest of the season. The schedule's not going to get easier as it gets out. They've already gone through the easy part of their schedule. But the other part is, I am noticing that they are playing differently. It's not like, they're playing the exact same way they were through a 10-game winning streak. They've just fallen apart here in the last few days. Not falling asleep on defensive rotations and switches, and not doing basic things like boxing out. They have like little 3, 4, 5-minute stretches in games where they play really well, and you're like, oh, okay, they're back to doing things normal, and then they just relax again. And I thought it was interesting last night to hear from some of the guys, like Donovan and Rudy, and hear them say that maybe they are getting a little complacent. Maybe that run of winning, going 19 of 21, made them feel like they were a little bit comfortable. And so they get to a point where they're in a game and they're leading by a little bit, and they feel like they can let their foot off the gas pedal. And the truth of the matter is that's not the case. They can't do that if they want to beat these teams.
And obviously last night Denver got them 98-95. It's weird to hear that, only because that hasn't really been the MO since Quinn Snyder's been here. That's this has been, and maybe because the talent levels upgraded this year, and maybe because they've been able to go on a couple of nice winning streaks. But the playing hard thing has always been kind of at the heart of what Snyder did, even when he first took over the team, and they weren't great necessarily. To see the Jazz not play hard and, as you said, make some little mistakes here and there, that's the stuff that we just haven't seen out of this team as Snyder's been the coach, especially the last year or two.
Yeah, and I think that's hitting the guys kind of hard. I mean, up until last night, there was still a little, twinge of hope when you talk to the guys after these recent 4 losses leading into last night's game against Denver. But last night, I think that's really when it slapped them in the face. And they realized, like, okay, we're not playing the way that we know we're supposed to, the way that we have, the way that we're used to, the way that we've been trained to through Quinn Snyder's system. Hopefully that little smack in the face will turn things around. Also, we never really know what is truly going on, behind closed doors or in the minds of players, because there could be a million contributing factors to why things are not going well. Everything from, the losing starting with, the news of Kobe Bryant's passing, and then you move into a whole new different set of emotions on a tough schedule where you play 3 and 4 days. And then in that schedule, you got Donovan and Rudy that are named All-Stars, and that kind of is distracting and causes a little bit of a shake-up. And then you come back home and you've got some rest and you expect to be the better team, especially close to the trade deadline when Denver comes in shorthanded. And so there's so many things that could be contributing to these, loss after loss after loss. But the hope is that they can see, like, all right, we're just not doing things the way that we should, and they turn it around.
D-News Jazz insider Sara Todd with us here on the Bill Riley Show. Was last night Mike Conley's best performance since he's been back?
The last 2 games, he's played great. He played great last night. He played great in Portland. He's been kind of the bright spot in these losses. And, I have not been one to agree with the doubters about Conley. Even the idea, like, he's saying he's struggled since he's been with the Jazz, I'm not totally okay with saying that, because I don't really think that he has struggled. Maybe he, wasn't shooting that great when he first got here, which is totally fair. But he still moves the ball and he impacts the game, and he does really well when he's on the floor. And so now he's both shooting well and scoring and creating and doing all the other things that he impacts the game. So, and the last 2 games have been great examples of that.
Yeah, the stat line's been good, and I'm with you. I always thought there was going to be a chance that we saw the Mike Conley we all expected to. Father Time is obviously undefeated, and you never know when he's going to kick in, but I never got the sense that Mike had aged that much that he wasn't going to be able to play anymore. There's something to figuring it out, and then sometimes there's an adjustment period of playing with other guys too. Well, even if you figure it out, they have to figure out how to play with you too.
Yeah, and honestly, what a blessing to get Mike Conley and know what he's capable of, but also be able to tell him, like, hey, you don't have to be that guy you were in Memphis. We want you to do a little bit something different. You don't have to be the guy that's going to score 30 points every game. And so they're able to utilize what he does really well in a different way, and I think that's actually going to benefit the Jazz.
Hey, Sara, we're at trade deadline day today, obviously. We all love watching for the Woj bombs that hit to see what's next. Looks like Miami's going pretty big right now, landing Iguodala. Grizzlies are making some minor moves as well. The Rockets have made some moves. What's been your big picture impression? Obviously, the Iguodala deal is a big one. We just found out that Wiggins is going west to the Golden State Warriors. But give me your big picture read, and then we'll talk a little bit about the impact on the Jazz.
Yeah, like you said, Miami is really being aggressive, and I think if the Eastern Conference already didn't hear them, or the NBA at large already didn't hear them, and thinking that they truly believe that they can be the team that comes out of the East this year, they definitely hear them now. And I'm really interested to see the dynamic between Jimmy Butler and Andre Iguodala. Those are both sort of alpha big personalities, and so the locker room dynamic, I think, is going to be interesting there, but also could end up being very beneficial for that team. Those are really hard workers who make winning plays often. So I'm sure that'll work out well for them on the court. We'll see how it plays out off the court.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
As far as the Western Conference, I think we're kind of waiting to see the other shoe drop for the Nuggets. They offloaded some of their younger talents that they were developing, and they've made some room and made it available for them to go after someone really big, whether that's, in the next hour or so, or it's in free agency. And so I'm monitoring that situation. The Warriors move, I'm not 100% sure that Wiggins is an upgrade on D'Angelo Russell. That's not someone that we've really seen prove that he is going to be the player that was expected when he was drafted. But the draft pick that comes along, I think, is probably what Golden State is really valuing. And in addition to, now they get to go under the tax, and they can sign, minimum level contracts to fill out the rest of their roster, and they won't go back into the tax, and then they stay out of the repeater next year. So, financially very beneficial for Golden State, and Minnesota gets what they coveted in D'Angelo Russell. But
I was a little surprised. I was a little surprised. That's where I was going to go with the Rockets. Capella, who's been such a thorn in the Jazz side, one of the few guys that matched up decently with Rudy. It appears like D'Antoni's going all in on small ball here, because with Capella gone, they don't really have rim protection of any kind. I know they love Robert Covington as a 3-and-D guy, but just your thoughts on what Houston's done.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. I understand like the way of thinking, and that D'Antoni is probably just loving the idea that they're not going to have rim defense and just play offense like crazy. I get that that's what they're going for, but it just doesn't seem viable. Yes, team, like if you're using the Jazz as sort of the stone to compare this to, yes, teams who play 5 out and are shooting, running, pacing teams play well against the Jazz, and well against teams that play a more traditional center. But there are times where you're going to have to try to get a rebound, and there are times where a lob threat is useful, or at least someone to just body a guy like Gobert. And so it just seems like it's not going to work. Of course, if you want to look at it as a way for them to sort of benefit from each other, that could be a place where Ed Davis might be wanted to go.
Well, that's what I wanted to get to you last. Dennis Lindsay's always known to be working the phones, but is always very close to the vest on everything. What, if anything, could you see happening in the next hour to hour and a half with the Utah Jazz?
There's a lot of smaller moves. The Jazz are not going to be making a big time move. They don't have the players or the room to do it. They're not willing to part with the players in order to do it. And so you're really looking at something smaller, whether that's another scoring wing, or it's what I think is probably more helpful for the Jazz right now would be a kind of switchable stretch 4 or stretch 5 that would be able to play some small ball 5 minutes, but also come out and switch onto guards. And so they aren't exploited so much when they play against a 5-out team. And, there's a lot of those guys that are around the league right now that are probably available for trade and very inexpensive, but those are also guys that could very possibly be available in the buyout market, which could cause the Jazz to wait around and see what they can get there.
If I set the over-under at 49 tomorrow for Dame Lillard, are you going over or under?
with the way he's been playing, I think it would be really dangerous to take the under.
Same.
I mean, he's playing out of his mind.
No, and he's coming back home where he always loves to play, too, in front of the people that saw him play in college here, too. So be interesting to see what happens coming up tomorrow night. Hey, Sarah, I really appreciate you coming on today. Thanks so much for your time, and again, belated welcome to town, and we'll talk to you again.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.
All right.